This adventure brought me to the infamous Allentown State Hospital. After staying up all night driving, we finally arrived early in the morning, before the sun had even rose. Allentown was a notorious place for being extremely sketchy and hard to get into, with police patrols and cameras inside and outside of the buildings. The look of this place really had an allure to it that drew me in. When I first discovered it on Google Maps, seeing the building with all of its above-ground passageways leading to different buildings in this beautiful brick asylum, it intrigued me and made me sought to explore the inside. Here I am checking out the view from the top of the cupola. It was a rainy morning, and I was excited to get inside to finally see for myself what was behind the walls of Allentown State Hospital. At this point, we were just still waiting to get some more light so that we could properly photograph the inside of the building. Taking a look out at the front lawn, can you imagine being a patient driving up those long driveways towards the building, not knowing what to expect? The Allentown State Hospital opened its doors in 1912. It had been planned out carefully, not opening for 11 years after its conception in 1901. It was to be opened as a homeopathic hospital. Homeopathy sought to treat patients holistically and humanely, using specialized treatment methods to try and cure the illness rather than just treat its symptoms. The campus itself was atop of a hill surrounded by mountains. It was really a beautiful setting. In the middle area that I am right now, there was pretty good cover, so we were able to hang out on the roof and photograph the exteriors from up here.
This reminds me of Allentown State Hospital. Yeah.
Finally, with the morning underway and the sun in the sky, I embark inside for the adventure of Allentown State Hospital. Here in the center of the building, this room had once been used for surgeries. Walking in towards the theater, it's still too dark to film in here, so I'll return later. Back to the roof, I now walk towards the administration building.
Taking a picture.
Heading down the staircase, I'm trying to make my way to the main lobby.
Yeah, that tag was like impossible.
The main lobby of Allentown State Hospital was absolutely beautiful. It had marble floors, walls, and columns. The lobby was one of the main things that attracted people to photograph this building. Being here in person, it doesn't even seem real. Looking at this fancy marble administration and just thinking that it's just left here abandoned, soon to be demolished. Looking out the main front window, I try to be a little bit quick because I don't want to be seen. But it's amazing to look out over that long grass field. Looking at the details of the railing is absolutely beautiful too. They don't build buildings like this anymore. And once it's gone, it's gone. Here, we're now in the attic of the administration building, trying to work our way towards the top floor of the lobby. The building was a bit of a maze, and certain areas were locked down, so to get up here, we had to kind of work our way around from the main staircase and find another staircase that had access to the top floor. At one point, this was obviously in perfect condition, but by now, some demolition, I assume, had begun. As you can see, there's these boards that blocked off demolished parts of the railing. It was really beautiful and breathtaking to be up here. Again, it's just surreal. You just can't believe that places like this just were sitting there rotting. This place had been closed for about 10 years at this point, and this beautiful lobby just sitting here. Allentown, while not perfect, sought to be a pioneering institution. In its almost 100 years of operation, it served thousands of patients. A lot of these buildings you see out here that are connected by the above-ground tunnels were built in the 1920s. Staff, doctors, and nurses would live on the ground. Like many institutions at the time, the hospital was a world unto itself. It had to be self-sufficient, and it had its own farm, a railroad connection, maintenance facilities. Anything that was needed for the hospital could be done on grounds. By its peak, there were around 30 buildings. In 1954, the patient population totaled 2,107. Walking the various passageways that connected the different buildings was really an experience. It gave the hospital a maze-like feel. It felt like a never-ending place that you could just explore forever. It really triggers the imagination. You can only imagine what it was like for a patient that was sent here, walking these halls, just looking at this building, and just trying to imagine what they must have been feeling or thinking going through here. The hospital treated patients from the local community. It served the counties of Northampton, Carbon, Pike, Monroe, and Lee. Now, having more light, we return to the auditorium. Pennsylvania News Channel 69 interviewed a former employee who described what it was like at the auditorium.
For a long-time employee, Bill Hirschman's favorite memories happened above the ground, in the auditorium, where stage and vaudeville shows were put on by staff for patients.
I would do more of the grunt work in the background to help them, because I can't sing. Some of the docs thought that they're all Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley. They would do a great job with the karaoke. And everybody just had fun.
McDivitt found
Eventually, the homeopathic model at Allentown was scrapped in favor of instead becoming a modern medical facility, and at the time adopting the standard psychiatric practices such as hydrotherapy, electroshock therapy, getting fresh air, and bed rest. 1930 saw the opening of the first children's psychiatric ward, which was the first of its kind. It treated 140 children from across Pennsylvania, and it was in operation at Allentown for 30 years until Eastern State School and Hospital opened in the 1960s. Whenever I explore a place, I always try and find stories from past patients or staff at the institution. Here's some I found from Allentown. Quote, I was unfortunate enough to be put there in the early 70s. It was a hellhole. Shortly after my arrival, I was medicated, stripped naked, and in isolation. What followed was more medication, straitjackets, wet sheeting, beatings, and electroshock therapy.
Wow.
To this day, I do not remember how long I was there. I made it out alive, but I pity those who did not. These people were cruel, heartless, and uncaring. I feel sorry for those who lost their souls and minds there. Under this account was a comment from someone else who said that they worked at the hospital. It reads, quote, I worked at Allentown State Hospital for a few years as a psychiatric nurse, and much of what you said simply did not go on. They did not utilize straitjackets, and they did not do electroshock treatments on site. Patients were sent to a medical hospital if shock treatments were deemed necessary. Nobody was beaten. You would only be stripped and put into a seclusion room if you were actively suicidal or a danger to others. The lack of material was there to keep you from killing yourself by hanging. There was a staff person stationed right outside of the door that you could call on if you needed assistance. Since psychotropic meds at that time basically consisted of Thorazine and Haldol, still used today for severe psychotic symptoms, a wet sheet pack treatment was used. The treatment idea was that your body heat would act as a tranquilizer. Allentown was one of few hospitals in the state that still used that treatment in the early to mid-70s. As times were changed and it was considered abusive, now it's used at spas and people pay for it. I may be one of the few people in this country that has actually participated in that particular psychiatric treatment. Again, it was only done for people who were in immediate danger to themselves or others. Although there were many unsavory characters that worked at the hospital, both high and low, the nursing and nursing staff aides were 95% good, caring people. Fortunately, it wasn't much longer until long-term involuntary commitments were deemed illegal and the rules reformatted. This change in policy had nothing to do with concern for the patients. It was strictly a political/financial motivated change. State hospitals were expensive to run and maintain. It is accepted today that the nationwide emptying of mental hospitals to save money and move responsibility to the communities was not successful. These areas that I've been walking through were the old dorms for the hospital. You can imagine these rooms filled with beds, with patients living their lives in these rooms. I will now play another part of the Pennsylvania News 69 interview about Allentown State Hospital.
Allentown State Hospital is set to be torn down this spring, but its legacy extends far beyond its walls. WFMZ's Bo Colt now looks into how the hospital became a national leader in the treatment of patients.
The one patient, he just knew how to headbutt, and I ended up getting a concussion. That kind of sets you aside because you're not expecting that as a younger person.
For over 30 years, Bill Hirschman was on the clinical team at the Allentown State Hospital. Working with and restraining hyperactive patients was part of his daily routine, which included something dubbed wet sheet bed pack.
It's where you get a series of warm bed sheets and almost mummify a patient. And they'd have to be in there, and it would calm them down. Some of the patients hated it. Actually, some of the old-time patients liked it.
But in 1992, those old-school methods of restraint at the hospital changed to what would become PERT, the Psychiatric Emergency Response Team process. Instead of using the biggest and strongest to hold on a patient, employees talked to them instead, and Hirschman was the captain for the first PERT team.
We empowered the patients to make their own decisions. And that was something you never heard of inside of a state hospital.
In my opinion, PERT, more than anything else, contributed to Pennsylvania's efforts to decrease its use of containment procedures.
Dr. Gregory Smith was the head of the Allentown State Hospital when it closed and served as the head of nearly a half a dozen others.
In 1998, Allentown became the first psychiatric hospital in the U.S. to be completely seclusion-free, and it would serve as a model for other institutions to try to achieve the same goal.
The difference at Allentown is ours was talking the person down as opposed to having to touch them at all, and that was new.
Smith, who is now a psychiatric and behavioral health care services consultant, also says the hospital banned the method of seclusion, one of the first in the nation to do so. and unscheduled medications, another progressive step in the treatment of behavioral health.
Very few hospitals were able to do what Allentown did, and we got significant pushback from our own hospitals in Pennsylvania.
And Smith published the results of Allentown's methods in a variety of medical journals, and it's been adopted by many law enforcement agencies. PERT
This area was the hospital's dining hall. As was stated earlier, Allentown was a self-sufficient institution, having its own farm to provide its food. Here we are now walking the underground tunnel system, heading towards the hospital's lab. Here we now find ourselves in the lab. This room had the hospital's morgue. Also found here were the surgery suites for the hospital. The hospital stayed open until 2010, and this section was quite modern. Here we find a modern X-ray machine. The hospital closed due to a decreased patient population not being able to justify keeping the massive complex open. The campus would then sit vacant for 10 years until 2020 when demolition began. The demolition sought to make way for the property to be able to be redeveloped. However, to this day, it's still just an empty field. It's my opinion, and the opinion of many others, that the demolition of this beautiful historic building was a travesty. Obviously, it's expensive and would have been a lot of work, but the building wasn't in that bad of shape and definitely could have been saved. Definitely it's more cost effective just to demolish a building and build generic condos or something. But look at this place and think of its history. Now that it's gone, it's gone. They're not going to rebuild anything like this. Definitely I think the building itself could have been used itself for housing. And people like that. It's a unique place to live and to visit. I don't think as a society we should be so quick to demolish these buildings. They've been here for so long already. I think we should have just waited and really weighed the historical value of this property. Of course, that's not what happened though, and there's nothing we can do now. So that's why I do what I do, visiting these places, trying my best to document them, to try and share the stories and what it looked like inside with all those who are curious. Down here on the first floor of the main lobby, I try my best to be quick and not to be seen, because there were rumors that this area had cameras in it and motion sensors. When walking around an old place, I always try and imagine it how it was in the past. And the only way to try and do this is by reading and hearing past accounts from people that were actually there. Here's another one. Quote, I was a patient at Allentown State Hospital as a child from 1958 until my escape in June 1967. The first building I was in was RW, and then transferred to building RV and then CB, and finally EN3 and 4. The place sucked. There were cockroaches in the cocoa, and the building EN3 and 4 smelt like BM. EN3 and 4 were for adults. The wet sheet bed pack scared me more than anything, and they drugged you up on Thorazine. Fortunately, I would spit the orange pills down the toilet. I was on 50 milligrams, and they lowered it to 25 milligrams. The medicine would give you a severe sunburn from the sun and make you sleepy all the time. I hated the place, so I finally escaped, moved to California, and never returned to that awful place. And I'm glad they finally tore it down. Good riddance. As of today, like I had previously stated, all of the buildings, for the most part, at Allentown State Hospital have been demolished, and nothing remains except an open field. However, its complicated legacy of attempting to be a pioneer in the treatment of mental illness will continue on and be told throughout history. And the striking architecture that once had been found inside of these walls can now only live on through the photos and videos of those explorers fortunate enough to have been inside Allentown State Hospital.
Yeah. Me too.